Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking into something, well, pretty everyday, especially in Arabic-speaking regions, used cooking oil.
Right. Seems mundane, maybe.
Exactly. But if you're listening, you probably like getting informed quickly, finding those surprising facts, those aha moments.
Without getting bogged down.
Precisely. So think of this as your shortcut to understanding something that actually has unexpected depth. We've gone through an article looking at used cooking oil patterns tied to common food habits in the region.
And our mission, so to speak.
Is to really uncover the significance of this used oil, not just what's left in the pan, but its wider role, things you might not expect.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how leftover cooking oil can give us this window into both food traditions and, importantly, the need for sustainable resources today.
Makes you rethink what we usually just throw away.
Definitely. Hidden potential in waste.
Okay, let's get into it. The source starts by talking about this really strong connection, almost calls it a love affair, between oil, fat, and Arabic cooking. It's fundamental, right?
Oh, completely. For cooking, obviously, all those amazing dishes.
Uh-huh.
But historically, oil was much more than just food.
Yeah, the article mentions other uses.
It does. Think soap, detergents, even paints, animal feed. Oils were versatile commodities long before we focused so much on just cooking.
That historical view is useful. It sets the stage for today's focus. Used cooking oil. And its a surprisingly key role in making biodiesel.
Right. We hear constantly about needing sustainable fuels. And it turns out the stuff left over from frying qatayef or falafel.
Could actually be part of the solution.
A really important part, potentially. Which brings up a key challenge. Changing how we see used cooking oil.
Moving beyond just calling it waste.
Exactly. Recognizing it as a valuable raw material for lots of industries, not just biodiesel. That shift in thinking is, well, crucial.
Okay, let's zoom in. Households. What happens there? The article mentions something probably very familiar to you listening, just tossing the used oil out.
Yeah, pouring down the drain or maybe in the bin. It's common practice.
But then you think, where does it all actually go?
And this is where things get a bit murky. The article races those rumors, about commercial fraud.
Fraud? Like what?
Like people collecting used oil, cleaning it up somehow, maybe filtering it, and then trying to repackage and sell it again for cooking.
Wow. That's concerning. Does the article say if that really happens?
It mentions the Ministry of Supply actually cracking down on some facilities caught doing exactly that. Illegally recycling used oil to sell for consumption.
Okay, so it does happen.
It seems so. But the expert quoted in the piece adds some important perspective. They believe it's likely a very small minority doing this, not, a massive widespread issue.
Okay, that's slightly reassuring. So what are the legitimate uses then? Where should it be going?
Well, the article points to the industries we mentioned: soap, detergents, paints, and of course biodiesel. These are the proper channels.
And there's actual demand for it.
Oh, absolutely. Strong competition, actually. The demand from these legitimate industries often outstrips the supply of used cooking oil.
Which, unfortunately, might tempt some towards those fraudulent practices we just talked about.
Precisely. It creates a difficult dynamic.
The article also touches on cooking habits themselves. It talks about unreasonable frying. What does that mean?
Basically, frying things for too long at really high temperatures. It darkens the oil quickly, makes it less useful, and potentially raises health questions too.
Yeah.
Plus, it's just wasteful.
Right. And how much oil are we talking about per person?
The figure mentioned is around 24 liters per person per year, on average.
24 liters, that adds up.
It really does. And consider the types. Sunflower, corn oil, vegetable ghee, palm oil. They're the common ones, sometimes used alone, sometimes blended.
What about olive oil, so central in many regional cuisines?
Good question. The article notes it's not typically used for deep frying, mainly cost, but also it doesn't hold up as well to very high heat for long. Better for salads, light frying.
That makes sense. Regional differences.
And technology, too. Air fryers are mentioned. They're becoming more common, though not everywhere yet. And they use dramatically less oil. That's a big shift.
The article even maps out a typical week of frying in a household. It's quite specific.
Yeah, it paints a picture like maybe fish early in the month when budgets are fresher.
Okay.
Then potatoes, vegetables mid-month, maybe less frying towards the end.
Yeah.
Fried chicken using ghee or oil might be more of an occasional thing.
Like a monthly frying cycle. Interesting detail.
Gives you a real sense of the rhythm. Now, if we shift from homes to businesses, restaurants, hotels, cafes, the picture changes again.
How so? Different patterns.
Definitely. Hotels, for instance. The article says they generally follow international standards. They limit how many times they reuse frying oil.
Makes sense. Quality control. How many times?
The source mentioned no more than 3 times.
Yeah.
That seems to be a common benchmark.
Okay. But what about smaller places like falafel stands, those little sausage shops?
Ah, that's where it's different. The article says, and it uses the word unfortunately, that in many of these places, the oil often isn't changed until it's basically, well, gone. Used very heavily.
Right. That raises questions about quality, definitely.
And the type of oil differs too. Restaurants often use shortening or olein colander. Those are palm oil derivatives.
Why those?
Because they're more stable at high heat. They resist breaking down longer than, say, sunflower oil. Good for busy kitchens.
Got it. But it's not all the same in food service.
No. Cafes, for example, that maybe just do some light frying fries, perhaps, their used oil tends to be higher quality.
Making it better for things like biodiesel.
Exactly. A more suitable feedstock.
And then there's falafel oil. That sounds specific.
It is. Apparently, falafel joints produce a lot of used oil. Often it's a mix, maybe shortening and sunflower oil.
And the downside?
Just the smell, really.
Mm-hmm.
The article notes it has that characteristic falafel aroma, which is, I guess, a minor drawback for some secondary uses.
Huh. You know exactly what smell they mean. Okay, so that's restaurants and cafes. What about sweets? Candy factories.
Right, another big source.
Sure.
Here, the focus shifts back towards quality. Sweets factories, using oils like sunflower or soybean or mixes.
They're careful with their oil.
Very. They change it frequently, maybe just after a few uses. So the used cooking oil they produce is generally in pretty good shape.
Meaning it's prime stuff for those other industries.
Excellent raw material. Soap, biodiesel, paints, fatty acids, even animal feed components. Really useful.
And are these factories everywhere?
There seems to be a concentration. The article mentions specific governorates, Damietta, Garbia, places like Tanta and Dusuk, Alexandria, other parts of Lower Egypt. These are hubs.
Knowing where they are could help with collection, right?
Absolutely. Logistics matter. And think about the sweets themselves, especially popular during Ramadan, but also year-round. Mashabek, Makalia, Lukat el-Kwadi.
Those little fried dough balls soaked in syrup. Delicious.
Yeah, exactly. Salabia, Katayef, even fried kunafa or Burma, all involve frying, often deep frying, then usually soaking in syrup. Lots of oil used.
My mouth is watering now. Okay, one more category. Potato chip and snack factories. Big industry.
Huge. And often with a long history, established companies.
How does their oil use compare?
It's different again. Interestingly, the oil used for frying chips might not be changed that often.
Really? Why is that?
The process itself. Continuous frying systems often limit the oil's exposure to air, which helps preserve its properties, both physical and chemical, for longer.
But they must produce a lot of used oil eventually, given the scale.
Oh, massive quantities, because of the sheer volume of chips made.
So what happens to it?
It's often sold off. The article mentions tenders, auctions happening maybe a few times a year. This is driven by both economic factors, getting value for the used oil, and health or quality control standards.
A structured process for disposal, or rather sale?
Yes. And the article makes a distinction between potato chips specifically and the broader snack industry. There might be different practices elsewhere in snack production.
Wow. Okay, so use cooking oil. Definitely not just waste.
Not at all. It's really quite revealing, isn't it? It tells us so much about food culture, from how families cook week to week, right up to industrial food production.
And the big takeaway is its hidden value, the industrial demand.
Exactly. For you listening, hoping for that quick, thorough understanding, we've seen the contrast between homes and businesses and just how sought after this resource actually is by quite a few different sectors.
Soap, biodiesel, paints. It's quite a list.
It really is. Which leads us to a final thought, maybe something to chew on.
Okay.
Given the sheer amount of used cooking oil generated from our kitchens, from restaurants, from factories, and knowing its potential uses, what could more efficient collection, better processing systems really mean environmentally, economically, especially in Arabic-speaking countries?
Big potential implications there. And what about individuals?
Right. What role could each of us play in that? In seeing this not as waste, but as a resource waiting to be tapped more effectively. Something to think about.